Good afternoon and welcome to our Taxing Authorities Summit. Really appreciate everybody here in the room with us today and certainly everyone online. I'm Commissioner Abe Layden and I appreciate you taking the time to join us today. I don't have to tell this group how significant and historic the impact of the 2023 reassessment has had on all of our stakeholders. Recently, this Board of County Commissioners, acting as the Board of Equalization, made a decision to return about $28 million back to the citizens of this county, but there's only so much we can do as simply the county. I know that today we are calling upon all of our partners in the Title 32 and the special districts to think about ways in which we can collectively lower our mills appropriately and provide some really needed tax relief for our citizens. I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge Toby Damisch, our assessor, who he's heard me say many times, and you now know well, that he's become the foremost leader in the state on property taxes and is really working hard in an unprecedented fashion to try to address the rising property taxes in our community. Commissioner Teal?
Thank you, Commissioner. Well, thank you all for joining us this afternoon. For this summit, we invited representatives from the roughly 300 taxing authorities within Douglas County. So for those of you here in the room, those of you joining us on the phone or online, hey, thank you very much. We appreciate you very much being here. If you're a property owner listening in, you can find out which taxing authorities levy taxes on your property by visiting douglas.co.us/assessor and searching for your property. We will also be taking your questions this afternoon, so please do stay tuned. My next comments I'd like to address to the taxing authorities that have come here. And I see that we have a few of our municipal authorities. I can see a couple of, several of our metro districts, and obviously our special districts. You're a part of this equation too. We found out from, and she'll be joining us soon on her way down from Windsor, but when Representative Lisa Frizzell was Assessor Frizzell, that we knew we were heading towards a major event with property valuations. Property values were going to go up. That was going to turn into increases to property valuations for the purposes of property taxes. And well, we were going to be in a situation where everybody's property tax in Douglas County, and actually in the state of Colorado, was going to go up. First thing I asked is, what can we do to mitigate that impact on our residents? And I know many of you are sitting here in the audience and you're saying, well, hang on a second. Our mill levy assessment is only a few mills. That impact won't make much. The county's assessment on every property tax bill that goes out is still only about 20% of that property tax bill. And so we have undertaken, the commissioners and I, working in concert with our treasurer and our assessor, what can we do at the county level to lower the impact of this historic property valuation increase? But guys, we can't do anything to really affect the bill that people are going to pay without your help. We can't do a thing. We can cut the county to the bone and everyone will still get a property tax increase. That's why we wanted you to come in today. Show you what we're looking at, give you the facts that you can plan to, and then we're going to ask you to join us in doing what you can in your own districts to lessen this impact, this big impact for some people, on the increases to their property taxes. Commissioner Thomas, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Commissioner Teal. I'd like to thank everyone for attending today. We have a tough situation for our residents in Douglas County, and I'm thankful that we've come together here today so we can all work together on your behalf. For our residents in the audience, there are several entities involved in your property tax assessment and your property tax rates. So if you are here as a resident, you are not representing a metro district or another taxing authority. Would just raise your hand so we can see how many citizens we have here. Okay, we've got a lot of citizens here. Good, thank you for being here. So the tax authorities in the room tonight, including your Board of Douglas County Commissioners, are the ones who set the mill levy rate for taxing that assessment, resulting in your total property tax bill, which you will pay to the treasurer. So I hope all of you know that you can go to the Douglas Assessor, put in your address, scroll down to the left side and click on tax authorities. And you can see there how many authorities you pay and how much you pay. So I checked this afternoon, I pay 9 different entities. And when I figure that out, I pay about 20.27% of my bill, my tax bill, is dedicated to what I pay for the county. I looked at one of the neighborhoods that I know has a really high metro district rate, and they also have 9 taxing authorities, and only 10.79% of the total tax bill for the people in that neighborhood comes from Douglas County government. So I just point that out to tell you that Douglas County, I believe, is going to do significant work in reducing the mills that you will pay next year. But not when you pay that check to the Douglas County treasurer, it doesn't all stay with the county. And that's why it's good for you to take this step when you go home tonight. Look up Douglas Assessor and educate yourself about how much of your taxing authority is the county and who else you pay taxes to in your property taxes. We've got a lot to get through today, so thank you for being here. Treasurer Gill.
Thank you, Commissioner. One of my functions is to collect the taxes. And there are very, very few options or no options available to me. They will be collected. They have to be collected according to state law. If I do not do that, I will be open to personal liability, and the county would be open to liability. So you can be sure I will, whether I like it or not, these taxes will be collected. If a tax is not paid on time, the interest rate is steep. It's 1% a month. That's 12% a year. And that will be collected. If it is not paid or brought current by September, the properties are then advertised for a tax lien sale. And once again, there are added fees and costs involved under statute. The tax lien sale is attended by investors who bid on it and receive a very substantial interest rate for paying the taxes that are due. If a property owner does not redeem that within 3 years, the investor can then require us to issue a treasurer's deed. There may be some changes in this proposal as a result of a Supreme Court case, but currently that is the statute, and it will remain, I'm sure, virtually identical to that as time goes on. So the effort to collect a tax is with the full weight and force of your state law and government, and there is no leniency in it. And this is causing a great deal of fear and concern that I've already seen from some of our most vulnerable citizens, our senior citizens, who are retired and living on a fixed income. I've seen them come into my office paying this year's tax and literally in tears because they're concerned that with the increase in valuation, they're going to be forced out of their home and forced out of where they intended to retire. So this is a major, major concern for many of the people. Also, if we take a look, one of the other hats I wear, is I hold 2 offices. The treasurer is one, and I'm also the county's public trustee. We have seen a dramatic rise in the increase in foreclosures. And it has gone up sharply, and unfortunately, it looks like it is going to continue to go up sharply. If our rate of inflation goes up, our rate of insurance on our homes has gone up sharply with the increase in valuation. Mine went up 50% over last year, and many of us are facing the same thing. So the increase in taxes is a vital concern to many, and especially to the senior citizens in our community. Assessor Damisch.
Thank you, Treasurer Gill. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, this afternoon to Douglas County. I am your Douglas County Assessor, Toby Damisch. I want to start by thanking you all coming today, and I want to issue an apology. We tried to schedule this event on 3 different dates, And due to the workload that my office experienced, which was probably 10 times what we're used to in a given year, we had to delay. I want to say hello and apologize to our friends in the Jewish community. We have a very important holiday that's happening right now. So thank you all for coming today. I want to thank the Board of County Commissioners that are sitting here with me. I've been working at Douglas County government. My former boss just joined us here. House District 45, Representative Lisa Frizzell was the former assessor, and I worked for her for a number of years. I have never observed a time where the Board of County Commissioners supported an elected assessor in the way that these three have now. And really what they've done is support the citizens by educating and informing on this issue, which is a statewide issue. In fact, in many cases, it's a national issue, because what's happening in Colorado is happening in at least half of the country. What's happening in Douglas County is happening across Colorado. And that is, assessors have followed the law through their 2023 reappraisal and reflected what occurred in the residential real estate market in that study period of time between 2021 and 2022, where we had really the largest increase in residential real estate market in any 2-year period in modern history. It's an incredible situation. It's no doubt a black swan event, because the citizens of Colorado decided to repeal Gallagher just before all that happened. We put all this together, and we're facing the notion of the largest property tax increase ever. And so we all up here take that very seriously. And that's why we're here tonight. We've been talking about the assessment rates and the law for the first few months of the year, providing testimony and feedback to the state as they were contemplating how to deal with this. And I think you'll find most of us up here say that it did not get dealt with. And then we went into the appeal season, which is my office's responsibility to respond to that. Through every month and week of this year, this group of people have looked at the situation and tried to do whatever they could at that time. And that's what we're doing tonight. So I want to thank you all for coming. We're here to talk about mill levies and what we can do to the final piece of the property tax equation, which are the levies determined by our local authorities, including Douglas County. So thanks again. And next we head to our moderator, Roger, please. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Assessor. Again, we want to hear your questions this evening. To ask a question, if you're on the phone, please press *3 on your keypad, and you'll be transferred to an operator who will take down some basic information. Once the operator notes your information, you'll be returned to the call and can listen to the conversation until it's your turn. When it is your turn, I will call your name and ask you to repeat your question or comment for our live audience. If you are online and would like to ask a question, please enter it into the question box and I will read it aloud. And if you're here in the hearing room with us today, please just raise your hand when it's time and we'll bring you the microphone. It's real important to use the microphone. Since we'd like to hear from as many people as possible, we'll limit each speaker to one question. And if you want to follow along the slideshow tonight, visit douglas.co.us/town hall. Back to Commissioner Layden.
Great. Thank you so much. And I appreciate all of our panelists for those introductions and comments. We want to turn it over to Representative Frizzell to maybe make some introductory comments.
Thank you, Commissioner. Representative Lisa Frizzell. I represent House District 45, which is here in Castle Rock. First of all, I apologize for being late. I was actually up in Windsor, and as it turns out, it takes a bit to get from Windsor back down here to my stomping grounds here in Castle Rock. So again, I apologize. This is such a critical topic across the state right now, and I think you all may have heard me speak about this from a legislative standpoint and express my great disappointment that the legislature, did not choose to address the residential assessment rate in a meaningful manner in this last session. If we had, we certainly would not be sitting here today. My hope is, and I believe, be talking about some of the future tax policy issues that are facing our state a little bit later on. But I welcome your questions and your comments, and really thank you all for being here today. Your engagement is critical to this process.
Thank you, Assessor. Commissioner Teal.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. Obviously, folks, you heard my opening comments. I really do believe there are solutions to be found based on the content you hear in this meeting. I know that we have residents here, and folks, you guys got questions, and I definitely want you to get those questions answered. But more specifically, my intent was to bring forward the members of the taxing districts. You're the ones that are going to be setting your budgets. You're the ones that are going to be setting your mill levies. I hope we give you the information that you feel confident that you can join the work being done by the commissioners. Last Tuesday, with working with the assessor, we lowered residential property tax valuations by 4%. And I know I've already had the conversation today. That's great, Commissioner, but why didn't you lower it by 40%? Because that's how much my property went up. Well, we can't. And I don't know how much we're going to articulate what would happen when the state then comes in and does that reevaluation again, and all the work that Toby's team has done. Anybody here gotten an appeal, filed a property tax appeal? Okay, folks, if we would have lowered the property valuation for residential properties by more than 5%, the state would have come down and made you do it all over again. So we wanted to avoid that. Our next step is to convene this meeting and to talk to you all about joining us in applying property tax relief here to the people of Douglas County. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Commissioner Teal. And now I believe there is going to be a little bit from the assessor in terms of explaining exactly how that 4% adjustment that we announced last week will affect the calculation of levies and our property tax revenue next year.
Thank you, Commissioner. Sure. So for staff and the people online, we're going to look at a few slides. And what I want to talk about is just get us caught up to where we are today, what's happened so far. We just, the panel just gave a summary of that, so we're going to run through that very quickly and just get to a point today so we can start talking about mill levies. Commissioner Layden and Commissioner Teal mentioned the 4% adjustment that the board made just recently, I think a week ago now, and we're going to get into the details of that a little bit later. But before that, let's just talk about the reappraisal. Very quickly, in Colorado, all assessors are required to reappraise property every 2 years. The appraisal date for this reappraisal was June of 2022. And so those two facts alone really create the foundation of this property tax crisis that we have, because the real estate market in the 2 years preceding that went up 30, 40, 50, up to 100%, depending on the county you're at in Douglas County. The average increases in assessments in the resort counties were 80, 90, and 110%. In Douglas County, we were at 48 for an average, 47 for a median. We're going to have another reappraisal in 2025. And that reappraisal will reflect market values of next June of 2024. So to the extent any or all of your property values have gone down since last reappraisal, that'll be reflected in our next reassessment. I mention this because so much of the feedback we get in the appeals period are property owners who come to us and say, I cannot sell my house for this today. And we agree, we know that, and that is the case. It hasn't been since the Great Recession, 2009, since we had a reappraisal where we sent out notices of value and the large majority of the population couldn't sell their house for that number. So it's been a number of years, and we have short memories. This is the study period that we use. The 2 years preceding the appraisal date, which is July of 2020 to June of 2022. But more important than that is the appraisal date, because the appraisal date happened about 4 weeks after the peak of the market. It was it was incredibly poor timing. What we're talking about today is less about value and more about taxation. And so to continue that conversation, let's just remind how we calculate taxes. There's 3 variables in the calculation of one's individual property tax: the assessor's actual value, the residential assessment rate in the case of a home, which is controlled by the General Assembly and the governor. It used to be controlled by the Gallagher Amendment. We repealed the Gallagher Amendment in 2020, and now it's in the hands of the General Assembly. I'm sure we'll talk more about that. And those are the 3 variables. The final piece, as many in the room know, is the sum of the local mill levies. So just very quickly, what is a mill levy? Each of your local governments and your special districts who have the right to levy a property tax determine through different ways, sometimes votes, sometimes table restrictions and other things, what that local tax rate is, what that mill levy is. The Board of County Commissioners will decide this fall what the county's mill levies will be, as will your local fire district, your local water, metro, city and towns, et cetera. All those districts that Commissioner Thomas spoke about that you're paying into given the location of your property. That's where we're at in the property tax assessment calendar right now. Right now, all of these local districts and these special districts and local governments are meeting to determine their preliminary budget. And they're doing that after the appeal season has been largely completed. So they're looking at that now, and a lot of you are in the room. And again, thank you for being here. So just to wrap up this tax thing, the tax calculation topic, here is an example of a house that was appraised in the last reappraisal, the 21-22 reappraisal at $635,000, and had taxes that they paid this year to Treasurer Gill's office of $5,979. Under the scheme of this reappraisal, that value on that home raised went up to $980,000. That was a result of the market sales of comparable property in that neighborhood. When we apply the assessment rate and the local mill levy as an unchanged number, because we don't know what it is yet, the estimated tax for this property is almost $9,000, almost a 50% increase. And this speaks to why we're here. Because we've talked at 3 prior town halls about that top number, that actual value. We need to talk a little more about the assessment rate. I want to point out, if you look at the assessment rate up here, it decreased from 6.95 to 6.765. If Gallagher were present, that assessment rate would probably be 5 or less. And this particular property, rather than seeing a 50% increase in taxes, would see maybe a 10% increase in taxes. So that's what happened when Gallagher was repealed. And that example is shown at the bottom right here. So it's obviously a very dramatic situation. I want to tell you personally, my office is used to, on average, about 3,000 residential appeals, and this year we got more than 30,000. It was an incredible situation in a negative way. Our staff worked nights and weekends to look through every single one of those individually. That was a very difficult effort, and they did everything they can to address every grievance that was presented in front of them. We understand that not everyone is happy with that result. But tonight, I'd like to mention, we brought some staff from the assessor's office with us. So if you're here tonight to talk about the mill levies that the taxing authorities are calculating now or are reviewing because of their budgets, that's great. We want you to be part of the conversation. We also have staff from my office out here. So if you come to also ask questions about your specific property, if you have a County Board of Equalization appeal that's pending or some other specific issue related to that, I've got staff in the hallway here that are ready to talk, ready to speak with you. So you can do that at any time that you wish. I think I want to pause now and we'll go to the next.
So thank you, Assessor. Very much appreciate that orientation. So let's start with a question that I know some in the room have. I made reference to the 4% adjustment we announced last week. How will that affect our calculation of levies and/or property tax revenue for next year? And that's to you, Assessor.
I'm sorry. I was distracted.
Do you need me to repeat?
One more time.
No problem. So the question we want to start with, how does the 4% adjustment we announced last week affect our calculation of levies and or property tax revenue for next year?
Yeah, it seems like it's a very different situation with respect to the calculation of levies. But in our calendar, the county assessor is responsible for certifying or reporting our assessed values, taxable assessed values to each local government and special district on August 25th. And we did that. Every county assessor in the state of Colorado does it again by December 10th. Our office will do it in late November. That recertification or reporting of taxable assessed values in each of your districts will include the 4% adjustment. So for the purposes of the local authorities, the adjustment that the county board or the commissioners applied last week will just look like a larger decrease or a larger than average decrease that occurred at County Board of Equalization hearings. That adjustment is, after all, a County Board of Equalization adjustment. The only thing that's unusual about it is it got applied to all single-family residential properties. And that part is very unusual. But outside of that, with respect to the calculation of levies, the rest of the procedure, the rest of the process is the same. Now, for those of you who are in the room and online and you have single-family residential homes, to the extent you pay into an authority that has a levy that is flat, and the example I'm going to give is the base levy for Douglas County School District at 27. The Douglas County School District Board cannot reduce that levy. And so you're going to get a linear reduction in property taxes because of that 4% on those levies that will remain flat. That's really important. And when we talk about details of the 4% later, we can get more into that.
Thank you,
Before we get
Assessor.
to the next question, I know we need to ask the assessor, I know you're doing a heavy lift today, but to provide some explanation about the multiple certification guide.
Thank you, Commissioner. So can I see a raise of hands of individuals who represent local government and special districts in the room? Thank you all for attending. That's a fantastic attendance. We appreciate you all coming today. So the Douglas County Assessor's Office, who typically provides you 2 certifications a year, one in August and again one in late November or early December, has provided one packet of information today. And those are available in the hallway here if you haven't seen it. We've got one copy per authority because it was a complicated packet to put together. Let me summarize what's in there for you. We've got a complicated property tax situation in front of us this year for a number of reasons. I think everyone in the room is pretty well informed because you wouldn't be here if you weren't. You're an informed citizen or professional working in this space. And we've got a new law that was applied this year, Senate Bill 238. We've got a ballot measure, a huge ballot measure, Proposition HH, which is on November's ballot. We have more significant adjustments that occurred at the Assessor and CBOE protest than ever before. And we have the largest increase in residential property values in history, all being dealt with and managed by the local authorities. So that packet of information includes the original certification, the original recertification at the end of 2022. It includes the certification that we provided you in August prior to County Board of Equalization meeting, but after County Assessor protest. You have a new document in front of you in that packet of information, and that is an updated preliminary certification, which provides the changes in assessed value due to the 4% adjustment that the county commissioners made. We're going to get into the details of the entire packet a little bit later, but in a nutshell, that's what's in that packet. The last 2 things I'd like to say is our office has begun construction of a tax authority portal. Because the property tax laws have gotten so complicated and they're very fluid this year. We want to be more responsive. So we've built a portal which we are going to, excuse me, provide more advanced reporting. And that gets updated more frequently so that authorities can log in and get that information when it's convenient to them. All right, so we can get into more of that later, but that is, in a nutshell, what's in that information packet for those of you who represent authorities tonight.
Thank you, Assessor. Commissioner Gill, did you want to take some questions?
Yeah, it looks like we might have a phone question. Roger?
Yes, we do. Let's hear from Lee first. Go ahead, Lee. Hello, Lee. Are you still with us?
Oh, I'm on the phone.
You're on the phone. Go ahead with your question.
I had thought they were going to ask the question I asked. I've been a real estate appraiser all my life. I have never seen where assessed values equaled market values. And that seems to be, at least it was on my property. And I would just like to know, is that a new law? Why did this happen? To the assessor, because he, I hope, is a certified real estate appraiser. Thank you very much.
And thank you, sir.
Yeah, if I could, thank you. That's a very good question. It is true that what we are all used to is the assessor's value being lower than the current market. And the reality is the assessor's value is always behind. If we look at today, the appraisal date for the current assessments are June of 2022. We're sitting here in the fall of 2023, and these assessments won't get updated into the spring of 2025. And so the perception of the public, all of us, is that every time these values come out May 1, that looks fair, is the typical answer. I can sell my house for that, is the typical answer. And that has been true since 2009. In other words, that's been true for 14 years. And before that, it was probably true for 20 years. So once or twice in a generation, the real estate market will depress or soften at poor timing compared to Colorado property tax law. It will happen right after the appraisal date, as did here. And so I would go further than what the caller said and say our values are higher than the current market. And that's why one of the many reasons it feels so painful. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Assessor. Roger, did I see we have an online question?
We do. Mary submitted this question. Metro districts collect fees through property taxes. These fees easily are in the thousands of dollars for homeowners, can vary yearly, and may or may not pay debt incurred. What oversight does Douglas County government provide of these entities?
Boy, good question. Toby, would you like to weigh in on that?
Lisa, no. I think it's really important to say because there's a vast misunderstanding. The Douglas County commissioners, and half the room knows this, those of you who work in the space, the Douglas County commissioners don't get to determine anybody's mill levy but their own. Anyone disagree with that? And so that is one of the conventional wisdoms in the public that we need to clear up. Because when we engage people personally in my office or through social media or through the news media, that is really misunderstood. These three individuals don't get to collect all, the Treasurer Gill collects all the money and gets to divvy it up. But the three commissioners up here do not get to collect the revenue and divvy it up. They don't determine what the rates are. We're having this conversation today because they can't do that.
Yeah, and that was something that we had explored earlier and even asked the county attorney of, we know that we need to go through a process in December to accept the mill levies from the metro districts. And we even asked the question, what if we don't? And all the work you guys do, what if we don't accept it? And there is a process that would ensue, and it would just delay. because yes, we do have the authority to accept it, but we don't necessarily have the authority to reject the mill levies from metro districts. Commissioner Layden, would you like to speak on that or take us to the next segment?
Yeah, we'll move on to the next segment. We'll pull Assessor Damisch out of the hot seat and put the commissioners there where we normally are. I know one question we've received from the press is, what are we planning to do with our current mill levy? And you may know that the Board of County Commissioners on an annual basis has an opportunity to reduce its temporary mill levy. It's no surprise to any of you that we are in a conservative county, the most fiscally conservative in the Denver metro area. We have a balanced budget. We're out of debt, actually a government that's out of debt, pretty exciting. But that's just how we budget. So historically, we have always returned the highest level of mill levy reduction we can, which is about 1.25 year over year. Right now, we haven't made any final decisions, but we're discussing an opportunity to go north of that 1.25. Annually, that results in about a $10 million return back to citizens. And again, we always say we don't need more of your money, which also probably sounds weird for government to say, but welcome to Douglas County. I mean, for us, we work for you, not the other way around. We have enough of your money, and the more we can return back, the more we plan to. The other question we get from the press is, well, how are you going to manage this? You're going to have to cut services and cut other things. You know, we have a really phenomenal county manager in Doug DeBoard who started out in budget. He's been in our office for close to 30 years. What he tells us is that we will still have continuity of services and no gaps. We'll just have to pull a couple of levers, but we feel really confident that key functions like transportation, public safety, will be heartily well-funded. Commissioner Teal?
Yeah. Again, we've got some options that are still on our plate. We are looking at a mill levy reduction. How deep that goes really depends on what we do want to do with the budget. You heard me say earlier, guys, we can cut the county budget to the bone. And without your cooperation, but even with your cooperation, every person in Douglas County who owns property is still going to get an increase in property tax. The math is very simple. You've got some agencies like the school district that they can't cut their mill levy. And then of course we know the MLO that they're introducing to the ballot this fall. And so quite frankly, I'm in favor. I'm a proponent on the board that no, we do need to cut some services here in the county. We do need to make the hard decision because we can ask you guys to participate in cuts to your mill levies in your districts. But I know many of you, I've talked to several of you, and you point out how small that budget really is compared to what we do here at the county. And so your argument is, if we cut much, what impact will that have to my taxpayers, to our taxpayers in our district? Well, if we all work together, it can have a big difference, quite frankly. But at the same token, I'm prepared that some of you, you won't do that. And so I believe we do need to cut some services here in the county. We do need to cut headcount. We do need to shave down the budget in order to minimize the impact on the average taxpayer who lives in each one of our districts. So I think that's what I'd like to do, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner Teal. Commissioner Thomas?
Yes, thank you. If any of you have followed my work for you as either the coroner or the commissioner, I hope you know that I'm a fiscal hawk. If you get my newsletter every Sunday night, you know that I vote no on lots of things during the year because we don't need to keep spending your tax dollars. I can tell you that of the 7 years I have been a commissioner, I have voted 5 times to reduce the mill levy, and that equates to $31 million that we have saved through those temporary mill levy reductions that we have done since I've been a commissioner. Looking forward, the county manager told us this morning that they're building a budget that may allow us to reduce those mills that the county is able to charge, which is a little over 18 mills, that perhaps we can reduce that by over 20%. And I'll be waiting. We have to see that budget by October 15th. I want to see what that looks like, because we do need to provide services to our residents, and we've got great employees. We have more citizens served per employee than any of the other governments in the Front Range, because we run such a lean budget. I want to make sure that we have the necessary services, but I really want to see what we can do, keeping in mind, like I told you, I live in Highlands Ranch. 20% of my property tax is dedicated to go to Douglas County government. My total mills in Douglas County, what I pay, are 91.36. There's a metro district in this county that the mills just for the metro district are 91.406. So the mills for that one metro district are more than the entire mill levy for my house. That's why you need to go to that Douglas Assessor website and see what taxing authorities you pay and how much you pay to them. So as we go forward, you can figure out and understand your property tax bill. But again, I assure you that I will look at the mills, and if we can deliver services to you by reducing the mills by over 20%, I will vote for that. Thank you.
Great. So we'd like to gather some feedback from the authorities. I know Stephanie Stanley, or is there a representative here from the Highlands Ranch Metro District? Oh, there. Hi. Welcome. So I think we're looking for a little bit of feedback from you. Commissioner Thomas is going to run out with a microphone.
Thank you. Are you looking for some feedback on what our plans are, or?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we're looking for us. So many are here, and we really appreciate that. And I think as one of the largest metro districts in the country, obviously we're looking to you for your leadership and maybe some insight in terms of what folks can anticipate. Yeah.
Certainly. Currently, the Highlands Ranch Metro District Board imposes a mill levy of 11.205. Similar to the county, that is a slight reduction from what our allowed mill levy is at 12.75. So already serving our community with a discount of over $1.5 million. So going forward, we will continue to be fiscally responsible and only impose a mill levy to cover the expenses that we have, maintaining infrastructure, providing programs and services. We also happen to be TABOR restricted. We're one of the few entities that are subject to TABOR. So our revenue is limited to new construction or growth and CPI. So our mill levy will most likely be coming down. I don't have an exact figure as to what that'll be, but our mill levy will be coming down.
Well, thank you so much for your leadership for so many years in Highlands Ranch.
And CPI is Consumer Price Index, for those who don't know those initials. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any fire chiefs in the room? Any fire chief? Here we go. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm speaking on behalf of the Fire Chief for West Metro Fire Rescue. My name is Jeremy Metz, Deputy Chief Administration. And I just here to listen to what's happening down here in Douglas County. We serve community Roxborough for our fire emergency services there. We're a larger fire district serving in Jefferson County as well. We have some concerns about the reductions. True that the growth in housing has been prominent. So has been our growth in expenses. We are seeing 30-40% increases on some of our major assets. A fire truck that I could purchase 3 years ago for $800,000 is now $1.2 million. With the increase in population comes the increase in service as well for 911. So we're really concerned about the reduction of our revenue, just because we have really been pressed to provide additional services to additional citizens, all while maintaining a balanced budget as well. We are very conservative as well. We have not increased our mill levy since 2008. So we've been able to sustain our operations, have a good reserve balance, but we're continually concerned about decreasing revenue. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And let me just add a note on that from Board of County Commissioners standpoint. So we do have our Douglas County Wildfire Initiative, and you all have been very supportive, both of our expenditures in public safety and wildfire mitigation. Many of you know or may know, and maybe don't know, that there was a fire really close to us right in Jeffco. And because we have the most significant wildfire mitigation aerial support in the state, that was addressed hard, heavy, and fast and didn't get out of control. So we know that 1 square mile in Douglas County represents an astronomical amount in property values. And right now, even though we have the best aerial contract in the state, it ends in October. Wildfire season is from January 1st to December 31st. And the Marshall Fire, if you remember, was in December. So we want to continue to keep a close eye on that because we know keeping your homes and animals and families safe is still a priority. So as we go into budget, I know as one commissioner, I will be asking for some dedicated increased aerial support through our wildfire initiative. Let me ask, is there any water district in the room? Is there a water district? Yes, sir. Not to put you on the spot, sir, but we certainly appreciate our water districts.
Question.
Sure. I think we're just trying to recognize and acknowledge all the special districts in the room and see if you have any thoughts or plans as we have this conversation today.
I think we'll just say that we appreciate you.
We probably should ask who you are and who you
having
represent
the
first.
meeting. My name's Barry Gager. I'm the treasurer of Thunderbird Water and Sanitation District, southwest of Sedalia.
Thank you for being here.
We're a small district. We've just gone into a significant amount of debt to drill another well so that we can feel certain that we can continue to provide potable water to our customers. We have essentially no employees. The directors get paid $100 for each meeting that they attend, not counting something like this. We run on a pretty tight budget. And I've been sitting here thinking about what, if anything, there is that we could do with respect to our mill levy. And we've always tried to keep it as low as possible, and I can't think of anything, certainly not off the top of my head.
Yeah. Well, as a board, I know we've always said for years, we don't do things to people, we do things with people. So part of this summit is really to just thank you all for the dedicated conservative leadership you've had for so many years and to just inquire. I mean, we really defer to your ability to make decisions about what makes sense in terms of mill levy reductions.
Commissioner, may I interject a question here?
Please.
We might have some representatives from accounting and financial firms who represent multiple authorities. So could I see with a raise of hand, are there any accounting firms or financial consultants who represent multiple authorities in the room? None. Interesting. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Assessor. Commissioner Thomas, were you okay taking a few more questions from the audience?
I will. Terry with Library District.
So good afternoon, everybody. Terry Nolan, Centennial Water and Sanitation District, which serves Highlands Ranch primarily. And I just want you to know that we do not charge a mill levy. You pay for your services through fees and water rates.
Thank you, Terry Nolan. Appreciate
You're
your
welcome.
leadership for so many years.
Thank you. Any other questions in the room? I see one over here.
Hi, I'm coming as a resident, so I'm not a representative of anyone. Today, I understand that the purpose of the meeting is to let us know about mill levies and how we advocate for those to be lowered. How do we do that? That's all.
So let me just start this conversation. What area do you live in?
So I'm a unique situation. I live in Parker. I am military and I'm not a resident of the state. I'm assuming my husband, who is, can vote. And if it has to do with voting, hopefully that is the way we do it. But yeah, Parker.
So just off the top of my head, have you gone to the website to look at the taxing authorities that you represent, that you pay?
No.
Okay, so that would be a good place to start, is find out who your taxing authorities are. And once she does that, there's probably Parker Water. I don't know if you live in a metro district, if you live in a neighborhood that has a metro district, do you know that?
I don't. So basically just go to one of those authorities and then advocate that they not.
Would you mind sharing what neighborhood you live in, Stonegate or?
It's called Horse Creek.
Yeah, okay, so you have a metropolitan district. You also have Parker Water and Sanitation. If you go to the county assessor's page, you can put your address in. And as Commissioner spoke about earlier, there's a section called tax authorities, and those are all of the individual local taxing entities that your family pays into. And so you can see how much from a mill levy perspective they're charging and what that costs you. If you have any questions about that, you can call my office and we can walk through it.
And then once you know what those authorities are, you got to go to the meetings. You don't go to the meeting, those board members don't know that you're doing anything other than paying your taxes with all the glee and happiness of somebody who wants to pay taxes. This is a process that, I've been involved in my own neighborhood here in Castle Rock. And when I say we took over our metro district, we did. We took it over. We took it over from being developer run to being citizen run. And I'm sitting here because I'm a beneficiary of my metro district having a 50 mil reduction this year to where now it's single digits. And that's great, but that's just this year. But that was the work of all of us neighbors getting together, going to those meetings and putting our neighbors on that board. Many of you folks here right now, you already live there. It's already a resident run board. But you as a resident, do you know that right now? And if you don't know that, you got to go to those meetings and you got to raise your hand and participate.
Thank you. I've got this gentleman over here, and then I understand that Senator Baisley is on the line to speak with us.
To the point, I'm John Cowan, president of a small metro district, Cherokee Ridge Estates. I think to the point of this summit and us talking about what we can do to help reduce mill levies, we don't levy 91 mills. We levy 50, which is still significant. And we don't intend on keeping any of our residents' money that we don't need. So basically just a CPI. And our tax revenues based on the current assessments looks like we'd have a 50% windfall increase in our tax revenue if we didn't do anything. We don't need that. We don't want that. We fully intend, I think the whole point of this meeting, how do we bring that down? We have plans to do that. We just need cost of living and hang in there and we'll be fine.
Sir, so you're reducing your mill levy on your board or reducing the mills?
We're looking at an option of either reducing the mill or doing a tax rebate at the end and pay back what we didn't need to use.
Well, that's awesome. That's great news. I think that's what we're trying to do today is figure out. Thank you for doing that. Yeah.
First, I'd like to congratulate you all for doing that. Senator Baisley and I actually ran a bill, Senate Bill 108 this year, that it's really important for all districts to understand that this bill allows you to, without any Tabor repercussions, lower your mill levy, provide a temporary mill levy reduction to your citizens. And that's very powerful for you all to know and to have the ability to do that because things can change and you may need to raise your mills back up if things change. And so this bill, this legislation, which was signed into law by the governor, actually enables you to do that.
Assessor Frizzell, thank you for that. And speaking of Senator Baisley, Our friend and colleague is on the line. You have a very responsive Douglas County government. Senator, are you with us?
I am, Commissioner. Nice to hear from you. And also, yes, it's an honor to run that Senate Bill 108 with Representative Frizzell. So, and by the way, that it only received positive votes through the entire legislative process. I'm sitting here in my desk at the Senate, on the Senate floor right now, I'm the only one here in the room. But yeah, we got unanimous votes both in the Senate committee and then in the House committee and on the Senate floor, the House floor, and the governor signed it into law. So it's now it was the idea, by the way, Commissioner. It was a commissioner from Teller County, Eric Stone, who made the recommendation that we run that bill, Senate Bill 108, and we ran that back in, put it together back in. Excuse me, I gotta send this incoming call to voicemail. We submitted that as early bill, and so it was one of the first bills up, and it was in anticipation of the very high, historically high property valuations. And then when Senate Bill 301 came through, or 303, excuse me, came through, which places Proposition HH on the ballot, that was submitted months later as a last-minute submission of 1 week left to go in the session, timed right after we all received our property valuation notices, so that we would see that as a solution when it truly is not. But all of the flexibility that's afforded by Representative Frizzell and my bill, Senate Bill 108, gives encouragement to the local taxing authorities, as she said, to not levy every mill that they can, that they're authorized to, but levy enough to where it gives the funding that they need and does not slam all of those property owners with the high taxes that they are justifiably concerned about.
Well, Senator Baisley, thank you so much for your representation of us in Douglas County and your leadership there. And for those who missed it, Representative Frizzell was our assessor for many, many years and is really probably the foremost authority in the legislature on property taxes. Assessor Damisch, did you want to lead the next discussion?
Yes, if I may, I would like to talk about 108 just for another moment, if I could. This is really important legislation. The Douglas County Board of Commissioners, the commissioners in front of you, have implemented a negative credit levy for several years now. And they've done that with the belief that that credit levy or negative levy could be removed should they decide the circumstances, or adjusted should the circumstances demand it. That opinion that tool was available to a board like this hasn't been shared across the state. It's been, I won't say a controversial topic, but not everyone has agreed that that credit levy concept is a tool that they could use. By everyone, I'm meaning each authority, of which there are thousands in the state of Colorado. But this board has decided that they would use it, and they've been using it for years. So again, I give them kudos to that. What Senate Bill 108 does is codify that into law very strongly, so that most local governments and special districts in the state of Colorado could apply a temporary negative levy, so which could be used very obviously this year for next year, so that they wouldn't paint themselves in a corner in the future should we have a real estate market crash or some other unusual set of laws passed that makes their budget process really complicated. So kudos to Representative Frizzell, Senator Baisley, and everyone else that got this passed. The next set, I think we've got questions coming up. So let me get through a couple of things. We've talked about, if I may, we've talked about how the Board of County Commissioners does not control all of the levies. The only levies that they have the ability to manage are their own. Those are the Douglas County government. This pie chart is an example of a typical home in Douglas County and what we spend our money on. So we were talking about a specific example in Parker of where our property tax dollars go. I'm going to skip through. I want to talk about, in this next segment, recent legislation. And we're going to talk about two bills, Senate Bill 238 and Senate Bill 303. And this is pretty technical stuff, all right? And this is a conversation that we like to have with the professionals, the authority representatives in the room, but it's also great to know as a homeowner. So Senate Bill 238 was passed and signed last year. And the most important thing it did was on the top row. It reduced the residential assessment rate from 6.95 to 6.765. That's not a giant leap, but it wasn't nothing. So there was an action that was taken, and that's headed in the right direction. Perhaps more importantly, if you go down a couple of rows where it says improved commercial, the commercial assessment rate changed for the first time in about 40 years, from 29% to 27.9%. And I want to make this point because this was some of the impetus behind Gallagher was if you go back just a couple of years and you look at the property taxes in the state of Colorado, residential property taxes were some of the lowest in the entire country. We were top 5 in terms of average property taxes. Extremely affordable tax on an average basis. And that was it's one of the many reasons we've had successful residential real estate markets for many years, because the cost of ownership was managed wholly on an average basis. Commercial real estate has been quite different. The 29% assessment rate has been an extreme burden on commercial property owners and as a result, small business owners. Your local pizza shop, your salon, any of those small businesses that are in the strip centers, that are in Park Meadows, that are in any of these commercial buildings that we visit every day. It's been very difficult to operate small business in Colorado because of that assessment rate. So Senate Bill 238 finally, 2 years after Gallagher was repealed, they touched on it a little bit. Then this reappraisal occurred, and the public started learning about what was happening as we, who were in the middle of it, started talking about that. And we got Senate Bill 303. And I would like to invite Representative Frizzell to help me out with this, because there's 48 pages of legislation in Senate Bill 303. And what Senate Bill 303 did at the highest level is create a referred measure. It created a ballot measure that we all get to vote on called Proposition HH. So rather than one of us go to the state title board and put forward a ballot measure, then go get hundreds of thousands of signatures, the state legislature did that through Senate Bill 303, signed by the governor. Representative Frizzell, would you mind giving your input on this for a moment? On how did this come about? How would you describe the process of Senate Bill 303 and Proposition HH occurring?
Well, I have a lot of choice words about this piece of legislation, most of which are not fit for consumption. But this particular bill, Senate Bill 303, was introduced with exactly 1 week left in the session. This is legislation that affects literally every citizen in the state of Colorado. So it was introduced 1 week, Monday night. I think people first started really being able to read through it and its inordinate complexity the following morning. It's important to understand that at the Capitol, a bill is introduced and then it is assigned to a committee. And those committees are citizens' forums. That is where you as a citizen can stand in front of the legislators on that committee and voice your opinion. It's really, really important for people to understand that this particular piece of legislation was automatically assigned only to the Senate Appropriations Committee, which is not really a committee that hears a lot of public testimony, if any at all. It never went to the Finance Committee. It didn't go to Local Affairs. It went to Appropriations and Appropriations only. It then went to the Senate floor where it was shuffled through very quickly. And then it came to the House. Once again, it was read into the record in the House on Friday, and it was assigned to, guess where? The Appropriations Committee, where we heard it on Saturday afternoon, 3 days before the end of session. Again, virtually no public testimony. Then it came to the floor on second reading, where House leadership imposed limits. They imposed a rule that is never been used until this session, where they limited debate on this bill that affects every single citizen in the state of Colorado. They limited debate to not 8 hours, not 6 hours, 3 hours, both sides. A bill that affects every single person in the state. It then went to third reading, where the House leadership limited debate and further ended debate through the imposition of other rules. This piece of legislation that was signed by the governor was not stakeholdered. Anybody here in this room, was your organization at the table? Were you asked if this was going to work for you from a revenue standpoint? Anybody? Well, that's fascinating because that's true throughout the state of Colorado. They did bring the fire districts in on Sunday. On Sunday, the day before the end of the session. So you ask what I think of this. I think that this is a hoax on the citizens of this state. Everything about this bill, except for one thing, we could have done legislatively. We could have changed the assessment rate. We could have lowered the assessment rate legislatively. We could have made the senior exemption portable. In fact, gosh, we've tried every single session for the last 10 years pretty much. The only thing that we could not do is raise the revenue cap for the state, resulting in your loss of your Tabor refunds. That's one thing that we can't do. We have to go to a vote to ask to keep your money.
Thank you, Representative Frizzell, for that insight. We know you've been actively championing the rights of our citizens for some time. I know we have a number of questions both in the audience today. Yeah.
Commissioner Layden, can I add one tiny little piece of information also?
Oh, that's Senator Baisley. Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you. Just one last thing to show you the insidiousness of this approach. As I mentioned before, Representative Frizzell and I submitted our bill that gives the flexibility to where we don't have to tax, the local taxing authorities do not have to tax to the high degree of the property valuation. We submitted that early January at the very beginning of the session. We know that the proposers of Proposition HH of Senate Bill 303, they had their bill in their hand way back in January as well. And the reason I know that, I'm going to read one sentence from their bill. It says, the ballot issue is a proposition to be identified as Proposition HH. Now, when they submitted, when they brought this to the legislature process, their Senate Bill 303, and it passed, then they handed over to the Secretary of State to put Proposition HH on the ballot, and her response was, we already have a Proposition HH. So they had, for some unknown reason, it doesn't make any sense, but they had designated what the letter designation for that ballot measure was going to be. Early on, they put it right in the legislation, which they shouldn't have done. They shouldn't have put it in the bill and say it will be Proposition HH. But way back early, they saw that HH was available and they designated that's what the ballot measure would be. By the time they got around to putting it through the system, their 50-plus page monstrosity, that had already been taken. So they had been sitting on this and waiting for months until we were all shocked by our property valuation. So it just adds on to the way they're trying to get everyone to panic, have a panic move that's bad for us, that would dissolve Tabor refunds. And Tabor has been so good for keeping the economy afloat in this state. But they've been mad at it for a long time and trying to find a way to wedge us away from it. And this is their approach this time. So we just need to know that this is not something trying to save the day for us. This is something they're trying to pull off in spite of us. So anyway, I just had to throw that last piece in. Thank you.
Hey,
Senator Baisley. Yeah.
Before we move along to questions from the audience, can I just ask the senator a question?
Of course. Senator Baisley, you open to a question from the commissioner here?
So,
Oh, yeah, of
hey,
course.
Senator, how you doing? George Teal here. Senator, we have a manager of a board member of a metro district here in the room, and earlier he talked about how he's got him and his board. They're not talking about taking this big windfall of money that they know is coming in, but they'd rather just keep it steady, pay the bills they need to pay, and let people keep the money that they can keep. With Senate Bill 108 that you mentioned just a moment ago, does that allow them, these Metro District board members and other special district board members, can that be what allows them to lower that mill levy in order to make sure they pay their bills, but their residents maybe don't pay quite as much?
Yeah, so it's just algebra, right? So if they're authorized 10 mills and the property valuation went up on average of 40%, then they would, if they were to levy all 10 mills, then they would get a windfall of an additional 40% more than last year. So all they need to do is figure out how many mills, and they can do it fractionally. They could do it, 6.7 mills, excuse me, or something like that, and levy those mills this time. And then they could, when property values normalize, they can go right back to the 10 mills or to whatever they were authorized for. In fact, they have to do that every year. If you're going to reduce the number of mills that you're levying in order to soften the blow or to increase, let's say, the amount of revenue that's brought in through property taxation to keep up with inflation, perhaps. And whatever you do to drop that, those mills that you levy, you have to renew that intent every year. That's according to Senate Bill 108. That was a compromise that we had to make. So they have to, if they're going to do that next year, then they can, and they can do it ad infinitum. There is, I mentioned in there, there's a feature that's of interest, I think. Excuse me. There was some hesitation by some taxing authorities to reduce their mills that they levy, knowing that part of Tabor is a requirement that when you increase taxation, you have to go to the people. So they were concerned that if they reduced the number of mills that they levied, then they would have to go back to another vote to bring it back up. And Senate Bill 108 makes it clear that no, you don't have to go back to the people to tax at the full number of mills that you're authorized at down the road. So I think we've covered every base and given everyone the flexibility to do the right thing. The only one that's exempt from all of this is the school boards or the school districts, because that's a constitutional matter and we were not able to include them. But every other taxing authority, yeah, they have that full flexibility.
So folks, that makes pretty good sense, right? Senator Baisley, Representative Frizzell did introduce the mechanism that a lot of you have so that, yes, you're going to get this windfall because property values went up. But if you're just interested in keeping the bills paid and keeping things steady, this is a mechanism that legally you can turn to provide tax relief to your residents.
Thanks, Commissioner Teal. And I just wanted to say, Senator Baisley, you were probably told you didn't have to do any math today, so thanks for doing some algebra on the fly. That was very nuanced, and I'm glad you interjected, because what you and Representative Frizzell had to live through in this last session, I know you know intimately how challenging that was. Representative, did you have another comment?
I just wanted to piggyback onto the senator's comment in that it is not unusual for metropolitan districts, which are essentially debt service mechanisms, that they have contractual obligations so that they may not be able to fluctuate their mill levy simply because their contractual obligations prohibit them from doing so. So it's a big caveat. And metropolitan districts vary so greatly across the county, across the state of Colorado. So there are some, like Highlands Ranch Metro, where they have continually flexed their mill levies down. There are others that simply are not able to do so. So that's important to understand what the structure of your particular metro district is so that you can make an informed decision, and so can they.
Thank you for that. Really good insight. So we have about 40 minutes left, and we know we have a lot of questions online, in the room, and on the phone. Let me start with any questions here in the room. Any questions here? Yes, ma'am. Thanks for being here.
I just wanted to point out, as a member of a board of a metro district, and as Lisa pointed out, we're all subject to different rules because of our original grant of authority. I'm in a metro district that has spending caps. As you all know, a dollar doesn't go as far as it did 5 years ago. So with a spending cap, it doesn't matter. Every year goes by, I have to adjust my mill levy in order to reach my spending cap. And in this year, I will not get to take advantage of a windfall. Indeed, I will be punished because I have a spending cap. So we are in a position, I would love it if I could reduce my mill levy for my neighbors and for myself. I mean, I live in my metro district, obviously. However, what we're asking our voters to trust us to do is to remove the spending cap and freeze a mill levy. And that would not allow us to raise that mill levy again until such time as we go back to our voters. But we need additional money. Our infrastructure has gotten to the point where we need additional cash just to maintain our roads. And so not everybody is cash flush. And I wanted to point that out because we've been on a bone bare budget for years because of our spending caps. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dassel. And you've been watching those pennies for many years, so thank you for being with us. And we always say government is best that is closest to the people. And so we really defer to everyone's judgment here. Any other questions in the room? Pete Smith. Pete Smith always has a question.
Hi, my name is Pete Smith. I live in Keene Ranch. So my initial appraisal, as Toby well knows this, we're good friends now after all these years, but mine went up 67%. I protested it. I'm now down to 30%. So the question really is for all of you in metro districts, what should you increase it by? Well, I want you to consider a couple things. This is like a perfect storm. Real estate values went up, but so did interest rates. And there's a lot of people that are on adjustable rate mortgages. We're just going to see, some of them may see their payments double over the last couple of years and stuff. And then we have the third part of the perfect storm, which is the Louisville Superior fires, which convinced the insurance companies that we all live in fire zones now, and they're raising the rates hugely. Mine is probably going to go up 40%. So I have a couple of questions also along the way. First of all, so the county is reducing by 4%, but they could reduce 5%. Why not 5%? And then the second one is, I'd like to hear from the library district. I know they're here. They just got a huge increase several years ago, and now they're going to get another huge increase. They just built a brand new building and tore down a lovely old building. I'd like to hear from them as to what they plan to do, because they are the fourth largest on my property tax. County, schools, fire district, Larkspur Fire District, and then the library is the fourth largest.
Great questions, Pete. Thanks for being here. Board of County Commissioners, or Toby.
Yeah, I'll take the first one because I think you were looking at me when you asked the question. The 4% is complicated, and we can talk a lot about that tonight, but it would probably eat up the rest of the time. But we were actually reduced the overall residential assessed value, the total, by over 1% at assessor protest. And so we got to that 5% number. And what the Board of County Commissioners did was act on the remaining that was really available under the law. So that's the answer to that question. Thank you for asking.
Thank you, Assessor Damisch. And we're fortunate to have our library board and the director of the libraries, Bob.
Our board is meeting this, I think it's Wednesday at 5:30 to talk about our budget this year. We have no plans to take advantage of the money that you're talking about. They'll pick the amount at that meeting and then we'll go forward with that. As far as the beautiful building that we just raised, problems with the foundation, problems with the sewage system, problems with the roof. We didn't elect to do that just for the fun of it.
Bob, thanks for that. And let me also, I want to honor and respect all of our municipalities that are here as well. If you're from a municipality and you have any comments, please raise your hand and let me know. Any other questions in the room? Yes, sir.
I have a question to all you. I bought house in November 21st. Tax value of the house was $540,000. I pay for this house $675,000. So my thinking is, if I pay $675,000, my tax value should be $675,000 and whatever, I should pay. But when I receive, adjustment first, it was $812,000. First Apple, they reduce to $800,000. I did second, I don't know how much they're gonna reduce. So is my thinking is right or wrong? If I pay $675,000, I should pay taxes for $675,000. Is there something wrong with my thinking or
No.
something is fishing here?
Great question. Assessor Damisch?
No, that is, in California, that is known as Proposition 13. It's the most common property tax set of statutes in the entire United States. California is probably the only state where everyone else outside of California knows about it. In California, you purchase a home at a price, and that is the value that the assessor sets it. That's the value that you pay tax on, except for increases due to inflation. So they may be 1, 2, or 3% they will tack on a year, whatever the local CPI is.
I know we got to go to our next segment. Commissioner Thomas?
So I'm going to ask the assessor, Toby, did you have another slide you need to go through before we go to the next segment? You're all caught up.
Yep.
Okay, so the next segment is a really important one that you need to listen to because you're going to be voting on November 7th about Proposition HH. So we heard our representatives and our senator talking about Senate Bill 303, and that was this doozy of a bill that was introduced 7 days before the session ended and approved the day the session ended. And everything in that bill could be done without us voting on it, except taking away our Tabor refunds. That's the only reason this, I was going to say preparation, Proposition HH is on the ballot. So let's start with the assessor. Why don't you tell us, Toby, what you think about Proposition HH?
Can I really tell you what I think about it? So the slide's been up here, and these are the top bullet points for Senate Bill 303, what we know as Proposition HH. And they slide just enough good-sounding things in this proposition to get enough Colorado citizens to vote for it. But I want to start at the bottom, highlighted in yellow. And Representative Frizzell discussed these two things already. This proposal would authorize the state to keep a portion of the state Tabor surplus to backfill local governments and school districts and spend it however they see fit. It would debruce an additional 1 percentage point annually, the cap, which is currently limited to inflation plus growth. And so the so-called Tabor cap above which we all receive refunds, or are supposed to, from Colorado state government, that cap would increase on an exponential basis each year for the next 10 years. Now, if you're interested in the math behind it, you can go to Advanced Colorado, Common Sense Institute, and some other interesting websites. There's many more details on our own, Proposition HH on the on the Douglas County Assessor's webpage. But those 2 points down at the bottom are as again, Representative Frizzell and Senator Baisley stated, only reason this is on the ballot, because all the good stuff, which is, they're all little small nuggets, each one of those could have been done in a bill by the General Assembly. That includes reducing the residential assessment rate from 6.765 to 6.7. Now, I want you to, if you haven't seen this yet, focus on that. They're reducing the residential assessment rate from 6.765 to 6.7. You received a 50% reduction in your value, and they're going to give you less than a 1% reduction in the assessment rate. The most important part of the tax calculation is the assessment rate. As I mentioned earlier, if Gallagher were still in place, that residential assessment rate, instead of being 6.7, would probably be 4.8 or 4.9. There's been different calculations done on that. Does everyone know what the Colorado Blue Book is? Everyone in here knows what the Colorado Blue Book is. I'll tell you, my view is that the Colorado Blue Book does not fully and accurately represent what Proposition HH does. By the way, I think someone told me today it was like 30 pages or something like that. I haven't seen it yet. I tried to provide input to that, as did many others, and it was ignored. When you read the Colorado Blue Book, the first thing they talk about is a reduction in property taxes. What they're referring to is that first bullet point. And what I would ask you to think about is, if your taxes are forecast to go up 45%, and instead they're going to go up 40%, do you consider that a property tax reduction? Because that's the reality of the property tax component of Proposition HH. Now, I want to reiterate a comment that was also made earlier. Many people think the way they get this passed is seniors will vote for it because portability is part of this. And portability is this notion that once you qualify for the senior exemption, which you have had to lived in the home and owned it for 10 years and be 65 years of age or older, when that happens, you apply to my office and we give you $100,000 off the value of the property. Proposition HH makes that portable, which means once you acquire that, once you apply and are approved for that, you can take it with you to your next house. You can actually downsize. Well, that notion of portability has been in front of the legislature for, 2 or 3 years? Yeah, they've had all the opportunity in the world to pass it as a solo act. And instead of doing that, they slid it in here because seniors vote. Yes, ma'am.
They're going to make you start over. There's another section in HH where in order to, you have to requalify for the new senior homestead exemption. And when you're, like I am, a super senior, I don't have enough years to be portable. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I will add that that is really complicated. I don't know if you have anything to add about that part, but there's definitely games being played there. One of the things they're doing by creating this separate classification of property, senior owned property, is they're going to stop. Up until now, they've always backfilled local government. In other words, the state has paid for that exemption. They're now going to make local governments pay for that exemption. So that fun little tidbit.
Thank you, Assessor Damisch. Treasurer Gill, it's your turn to weigh in on HH.
It is the most disingenuous thing that I've seen come out of our legislature, and that's saying a fair bit. They are sprinkling a few things like the senior exemption portability that we've been trying to get year after year, and they won't do it. They dropped it in this as a little bit of candy around the poison. But if we lose the Tabor benefit, which we will lose with this by backfilling other things, then it's going to cost us much, much more than it's giving us up front, even for the seniors. It's a very deceptive bill, but their idea is people will read the blue book and they'll say tax reduction. Well, yes, I want a tax reduction, and they won't go further. It's basically the same tactic they used successfully to repeal Gallagher. And we've been over already tonight what that did to us. You know, thank you, legislature. They are out to increase our taxes, and they're calling it a tax decrease. So I would agree with Commissioner Thomas's, maybe it was a misstatement of preparation. It's something that is designed to give temporary relief, but doesn't solve a problem.
Mr. Layton, would you like to weigh in on HH?
I would. Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. Great metaphor. You know, in simple terms, this is not a meaningful property tax reduction. So I think when Treasurer Gill says deceptive, I think that is an accurate characterization of Proposition HH. Listen, you have two types of elected officials in this realm, those that want more of your money and those that are trying to take less. This group here is trying to take less. And there are those in the state that just want more of your money. They think they need more money for all sorts of things. We don't agree. So there are elected officials that wanted to come after your Tabor refund. And I think that's what's actually going on here.
Mr. Teal on HH.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. I mean, folks, we wouldn't have to be here tonight talking about this bump in property taxes if this solved the problem. And so, you know, the treasurer said it's being pitched as this temporary means of addressing the property tax crisis we're getting into. We wouldn't have had to have said a word up until this segment if this actually addressed that. And I think that's what's most disappointing for me is you're going to hear the governor, you're going to hear members of the legislature, you know, people who work with Representative Frizzell out doing commercials saying, pass this for tax relief. But these other issues we've been talking about of this increase in tax relief, it doesn't touch. It doesn't address at all. And, you know, our 4% reduction in the valuation that we did last Tuesday that we've talked a little bit about, okay, that's going to go a little ways, but this doesn't even go anywhere in 10 years. You know, you'll have a substantially, you'll have a lower property tax mill rate, but then you won't have your Tabor refunds. This year, people who you talk to that are going to be upset about their property tax increase, this does nothing for. So for me, I'm a no vote on this one. I encourage you to be a no vote on this one. The reality is this imposes additional restrictions on us here at the county level that then we can't get creative. We can't do additional things to provide tax relief in the future if we have, it's proposition, not preparation, HH. So I would ask you, I'll be voting no. I would ask you to vote no as well.
I think the big takeaway to remember is that while this says this is a tax relief, it is not. You will still be facing the largest property tax increase in the history of Colorado if HH passes, and you will do it without getting your Tabor refunds in the future. So just remember 3 words. Just vote no. Representative Frizzell.
Well, I think you all know how I feel about it after I spoke earlier. But, you know, I think that it's really important to understand and that this is a referred measure. And so I hear people ask all the time, you know, because we passed the Gallagher repeals in 2020. And that the verbiage with the Gallagher repeal started out saying, without an increase to tax rates. I think you've heard Assessor Damisch talk about if Gallagher were still in place, we wouldn't be having these conversations because that residential rate would have been allowed to float down and we wouldn't be seeing this property tax increase. I have talked to so many people who feel like they were really misled by the ballot language. And they say, how can they do that? How can they lie to us? Well, if these bills, if the Gallagher repeal legislation had gone through the title board, where they actually do make sure that the language on the ballot is truthful and verifiable and makes sense to voters, it would be one thing. But when these bills become propositions, it's a referred measure. And that means that the ballot language is included in the bill. So the ballot language for HH, for the Gallagher repeal, I never saw the title board. It didn't have to. The bill sponsors and the governor's office created this bill language to be what they wanted it to be, to make it appealing to voters, even if it isn't true. That's important to understand. Please do vote no.
Commissioner Teal, you're up next.
Hey, thank you so much, Commissioner, and thank you, Representative. Folks, we really appreciate everybody who shows up in person and everything, but Roger, I believe we got a phone question to address.
We have. Susan's been waiting over an hour. Susan, go ahead. It's your turn.
Thank you. Fortunately, you've answered a lot of my questions in the last hour. So I was really going after kind of what the Cherokee Estates guy said, that, you know, as taxpayers, we don't mind giving you more money to make cost of living expenses, but we're not interested in you receiving huge windfalls that you don't need, as many of you have said. So I think that's been pretty thoroughly addressed.
Very good. Thank you very much, ma'am. Roger, do we have an online question?
We do. Cassie asked, is the 4% already accounted for in the figures on our forms that were handed out?
And I believe that answer is no, but again, we all know the real smart guy at the table is Assessor Damisch.
Thank you, sir. I'm not sure what she's referring to by forms, but if she filed an appeal at assessor protest, oh, is this an authority question? Okay, let's get into that, shall we? All right, so there are multiple pages in here. All right, and if we go through to page 2, for those of you that have one of these packets that represent authorities, you're going to see a description of each one of the certifications that are provided to you. As an example, well, this is not something you've ever seen before, so I'm going to start by admitting that. We're trying to give you every piece of information that we have available to us so that you as authorities can contemplate it as we go through the rest of the year. So in this packet is the recertification from last year in December. Included is the August certification that we sent out, which included the reductions made at assessor protest. As you move through, you'll get to a certification that does not have a watermark on it. This is your updated preliminary certification. So we took your first certification sent out on August 25th and then applied the adjustments from the 4% adjustment action that the Board of County Commissioners performed last week. So that page, certification document without a watermark, is now your most recent official certification for every authority in the county. Yeah, it's got a date of 9/19. I don't, are the other dates different? Sorry, yeah, I've got different dates on there. If you look through this, the remaining stack of certifications, you'll see continued watermarks. We have gone ahead and applied Proposition HH to our current values for you. So if we get to November, is it 8th? Election day? 7th. And Prop HH, God forbid, passes, then that becomes your certification until we recertify in December. All right. And then finally, and we got a phone question coming up. We've done you the service of telling you if Gallagher were still in action, what your certification would look like. And if anyone's wondering what we're getting to, if it's not obvious, is the vast difference in both assessed value and revenue, not for all, but for some authorities in Douglas County, is incredible. And that document paints the picture. You compare that to the unwatermarked certification, and you can sort of see what our citizens are looking at in the way of property tax. We're getting the hand wave and running behind, so I want to add one more thing. There are a couple other graphs or charts on here. We have calculated the backfill for every authority in Douglas County, and that has been submitted to the state of Colorado. That was due on September 15th. Another little fun tidbit about Proposition HH, it had some language in there that directed Treasurer Gill to provide backfill data to the state for every authority, data that he doesn't even have in his office. So it's another example of how well thought out that Senate Bill 303 was. Anyways, this backfill calculator tells you under Senate Bill 238 what your potential backfill would be. It does not run all the way through the final calculation. It just gives the data that the state required to give us. If you represent an authority or are at an authority and you have questions about any of these, you can call our office. I'm your county assessor. Deputy Assessor Monica Babbitt is in the back of the room. Either one of us can answer questions about any of the pages in this packet. Does that answer that question? Is that helpful about what's in this packet? There's one more, just to finish the thought, there's one more page on there which has sort of a dashboard. And what that dashboard has done was completed by the staff in our office, and they're sitting in back. They've taken all this certification data, it's in a database, and they present it on one page. And it looks like a sort of visualization of data, it looks like a big table. And that's in the packet as well. And so you can see you can see the result of all those certifications in one view on that page. Thank you.
Thank you, Assessor Damisch. Roger, online call?
Let's go first to Karen. Karen, go ahead with your question.
Yeah, is there any particular thing that a homeowner can address specifically through any one of the 3 appeal process levels?
I'm sorry, I did not follow the question. Could we try the question again, ma'am, please?
As a homeowner, I went through the first level of the assessment appeal. Now getting ready for the second level. I understand there's a third level. Is there anything specifically that can be addressed in that process other than just neighborhood comps?
Yeah, I would, you know what I would suggest you do? I would suggest you call our office and get some direction. We are very helpful. We're advocates for our citizens. We are not adversarial to our citizens. So the best way to do that is call our office. And in fact, our residential appraisal manager is sitting in back smiling at me that I just gave her some work. Call and ask for the residential appraisal manager. She'll take your call and walk you through what you should do for County Board of Equalization. And if you do not get the result you want at County Board of Equalization, then what you might do at the next level, which is called Board of Assessment Appeals. I hope that helps. Call our office, please.
Thank you, Toby. Roger, do we have another online question?
I do. This one came from Sandy. How does the senior exemption work with the 4% adjustment and the $15,000 exemption enacted by Senate Bill 22238?
Yeah, property tax is just getting more complicated. I just want to throw in one of the things that this group did as we were working through this year and analyzing all the potential actions we might take or what we might do for our citizens is look at the state constitution. And the state constitution the state constitution addresses property taxation and expects it to be uniform, transparent, and just. And this whole situation raises a question as to whether any of that's true anymore. And this question typifies that because she's asking about the $15,000 adjustment from Senate Bill 238, a senior exemption, and the 4%. So it's all in a chronological order. We started with the May 1 notice of value. And then if you filed an appeal at the assessor level, you got a result that was either adjust or deny. After that result, the 4% adjustment applies. After the 4% adjustment applies, the $15,000 exemption applies. And after that applies, the senior exemption applies. So that is the order of events. Clear as mud, right? If you want to get into those details, again, call our office and we can walk through it if the details are important to you. Thank you.
Well, tell you what, folks, we had a couple of online calls, online questions, call questions. Who's got a question here in the chamber? Oh.
What do I ever learn about?
Well, stand up, ma'am. Tell us who you are. Tell us where you're from.
I'm Sandy Brassell, and I've lived in my house in Arizona for 22 years and moved here a couple of years ago to be near my family. And I am totally like confused with your tax system here. It's like, I cannot believe I owned a house, the house that I bought, that I did own for 22 years. My taxes went in Scottsdale from $650 and I'm only paying $1,200. I've kept the home. And I just am totally confused on what's going on and would like to learn. I'm old, but I'm teachable and would like to learn more about your tax system. And if I could have a private interview with somebody, I'd love it. I'm dyslexic.
The good part is, Toby, I think you and your folks, you can probably help out a little bit on that one. Again, you're the smart one on this stuff.
That's very kind of you, even though you know it's not true. Yeah, our office, look, it's our job to know this material. But there are also a lot of individuals across the state, Representative Frizzell.
I got a loud voice, but I am very confused on how you guys do things. And I mean, I'm sure you'd be confused about us having such low taxes too and a low assessment rate, but every state is different, I understand. But this one, I have to tell you, I've lived in Cheyenne, Arizona, and here, and this is most confusing.
Okay, well, you know, I got to be honest, I always thought property taxes were super simple, super easy. And then we repealed Gallagher, and all of a sudden it got very complex. And now, as a guy who's in charge of putting, you know, assessing the mill rate and all the conversations we've had, I'm with you. I'd like us to keep it as simple as we can, and I think that's what the goal of tonight is to do what we can to make it simple for all of our taxpayers. Tell you what, Toby, would you like to take it and take us into a wrap up?
Well, I will make my last comment, but hopefully it's not the last comment. I actually want to ask one more question of the people in the room, because this is the most common questions I receive. Citizens are very interested in how to engage their government this year. Historically, it's been just talk to the assessor, and the rest doesn't matter. But since the Gallagher repeal and the constant change in property tax, now they want to know, who do I talk to about the assessment rate? Who do I talk to about my mill levy? So for the authority people in the room, can you provide some guidance? Because there might be 1,000 people on this, listening to this on the phone. Can you provide some guidance? How do they engage you? You might not want them to, but I'm asking you today, how can they? Do you want to send emails? Is there a meeting that they can attend? Give us some help as to how we can teach the citizens to engage the local authorities.
Seeing a lot of hands in the room. Thanks for offering that.
Yes, I'm Bob Laguerre from the Inspiration Metro District. And we would say if you live in a Metro District, just attend one of your board meetings. A lot of them are virtual. Probably most of them anymore are virtual. And this time of year, they're all working on the budgets and they're going to determine the mill levy. And we've already decided we're going to lower the mill levy till it meets the dollar amount we need to operate the district. And that bottom line, it's going to come down. But all you have to do is, if you live in a metro district, attend your meeting. You get email notices, you get flyers, you get blasts. Most people ignore them.
All you have to do is show up.
Thank you, Bob Laguerre. How about a round of applause for lowering that mill levy? Thank you. Anybody else in the room on that? Yeah. And you know what? I apologize, but I think we do need to wrap up. So we'll just take it back to Toby.
Hey, thank you all for attending. I know this is an unusual event. We have a lot of representatives from authorities in the room. And as we head into the mill levy calculation season, I would ask you to take the message back to your boards that the citizens of Douglas County are stressed, tense, and concerned about this. When you put together the potential increase in property taxation with what's happening in homeowners insurance, interest rates, what they paid for their home and principal, that principal, interest, taxes, and insurance payment on top of everything else, we're in for some trouble if we don't help. Thank you very much for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Assessor. You're here. Treasurer Gill.
Thank you, and thank you very much for coming, folks. This is an incredibly important meeting for all of us in the county. One of the questions I'm getting is, when will we get your final tax bill? It should be coming out towards the end of January 2024. The legislature, in what's coming up, may postpone that a whopping 10 days to give us a chance to figure out what they've done that changes all of our software. The other thing that we really need to bear in mind is I will be bringing a letter out with the tax bill this year that'll come to every taxpayer who pays a property tax in Douglas County. And part of that is going to be a description of where your tax money is going, which of the metro districts represent you, what they do, and contact information for them. As has been mentioned, though, that's a little late because that's when the tax bill's already out. Right now, you need to get in touch with your metro district and make sure they hear what your needs are. Some metro districts are hard to get in touch with. I have one, and I've lived in this county since 1984. They have never posted a single meeting anywhere unless it's on the back door of one of their buildings. So who they are, where they are, you have to do a lot of research to find out. So do take a look. Toby, our assessor, has given you information on where to find data. There's another piece for you that his office and my office combined to provide, and it is at www.yourdugcotaxes.com. And that you have maps, you can zoom in on your property, and it'll give you the breakdown of your taxes, and you can drill down to see who your authorities are. You can also compare what they are with neighboring communities by going over to one of their properties. So these are available to you. You don't have to remember that URL. Go to my website or to Toby's, and you'll find it there. Once again, thank you very much for being here, and thank you for your concern.
Thank you so much, Treasurer Gill. Appreciate you. Representative Frizzell.
Thank you, Commissioner. I just want to make sure that we acknowledge Assessor Damisch and our Board of County Commissioners, because throughout this year, they have held countless community meetings and town halls. And as a citizen, I'm just really grateful for the transparency that we have here in Douglas County. It is not this way pretty much anywhere else in the state of Colorado. We've seen assessors kind of stick their head in the sand, not want to deal with this problem. And you have leadership in this county that really wants to deal with it head on and make sure that people understand the processes and what's going on. So I really want to thank you all for that. Just in closing from my part, I really do want to emphasize again how important it is to vote no on Proposition HH. And I'm going to tell you why, is because I don't believe that the governor can stand by if this proposition goes down and do nothing. He must call a special session of the legislature so we can do what we should have done 6 months ago, 8 months ago, and that's lower the residential assessment rate and provide meaningful tax relief to the citizens of this state. It can still happen. It can still happen, and I think it needs to happen. So thank you very much. It's an honor to be here with you tonight.
Thank you, Representative Frizzell. And I think, as you can all see, we get along pretty well in Douglas County as elected officials, and we talk, and we're very appreciative for those relationships. You know, Commissioner Thomas came up with a great metaphor tonight, and I'm going to continue that. So we all remember the bottom line is that this tax measure is a pain in the rear. Preparation HH is a hemorrhoid that is not going away unless you vote no on HH. Commissioner Teal.
Hey, thank you, Commissioner. Folks, thank you all so much for coming. I mean, to you, the residents, I hope you have an appreciation for the dedication we have to mitigate this big property tax increase. Here's the good news. Every single one of us, we all live here. We pay the taxes too. Okay, we're with you on this. To those of you who are coming in from taxing authorities, we feel your pain too. I hope you have an appreciation of the work that we're trying to do to pass on tax savings and to pass on and to mitigate this big tax increase, because that's our job too. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for speaking out if you're residents on what you think, on what you wanted to know. And as far as the taxing authorities, again, thank you guys for coming. Thank you for sharing us the challenges that you face. But we're here for you. We're here to help you reach this goal with us, to keep this from being, you know, like the worst property tax year in the lives of so many of the people of this county, and instead be something that we can all live with.
Thank you. You know, I'm always appreciative when we have a town hall and there's so many citizens here, because in Douglas County, citizens want to understand what's going on. So thank you to the citizens who are here. The Taxing Authority, thank you for being here to get up to speed on what you can do to help your residents. None of these meetings happen on their own. So there's a lot of staff members in the back. Roger, all the staff who support us to get these messages done. Let me just answer the question about how can I learn more about property taxes? There is a wonderful thing called the Independence Institute in this state. And there is a young man named Ben Murray who has a series of videos on that website. So you can go to the Independence Institute. Look for the videos by Ben Murray. He explains what is going on with HH and why you need to vote no on HH. So I always tell everybody, find 2 friends this week who live in Colorado and tell them vote no on HH, because you will still have the biggest property tax in the history of this state if this thing passes. It is not tax relief. It is stealing your Tabor refunds. Thank you for being here, and God bless everybody.
Thank you very much. On behalf of Douglas County, thank you for joining us today. If we did not get to your question tonight, we invite you to submit any questions you may have about this or other topics at douglas.co.us/citizen connect. We hope you'll join us again for a future town hall, and we wish you good night.